New settlement details are causing a ruckus.
NCAA lawsuits are always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to break it down for you.
Hey, great to have you here on the mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. And Steve, we want to talk about the NCAA versus House lawsuit case that's going on. There's been a lot of ongoing, especially Ross Dellinger. I think that's who you want to speak to. We're going to let you drive this, but some new information on the settlement that just came out here. Was it today? Or over the weekend anyway.
It's been trickling out day by day, every day.
And I think I saw that they're, and maybe you'll get to this, they're thinking about maybe trying to get to an agreement this week coming up.
Yep.
So we'll get this sucker dropped on Monday, because Lord knows when that's going to happen. But I'll let you drive the boat. What do you got here for us?
Okay, so first of all, as we always say, we like to keep the conversation going on this. We're not the people are out there that are breaking the breaking news, latest. We let other people break the news first,
right?
And then we just want to have a discussion. So put your whatever you think about this matter, good, bad, whatever. We want to see what your comments are. We want to keep the discussion going, and I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about this house settlement going forward. Mm-hmm. Maybe in our live episode, which is coming up on Wednesday, if anything new has broken or changed, we'll talk about it then. So
make sure you check us out Wednesday night, 8:30 Eastern, live episodes. We love having discussions. We've got some normal guests, or our dwellers, as I call them. Not normal, they're special. Our dwellers that come on. Please check us out. We'd love to say hi to you, even if you come on for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just say hello.
Just come in the chat. The live chat's hopping. It's fun.
I like to have a good time.
It's popping.
All right. Sorry. Back to the episode.
All right. So this conversation, this episode is really driven by reporting that's been done by Ross Dellinger.
Yeah.
So if you're a college football fan, you're not following Ross Dellinger on Twitter X, you need to. He's done a great job. Yahoo Sports at Ross Dellinger on the Twitter X platform. You definitely should be following him. He's covering this topic for Yahoo Sports, and he's the best one out there, I think, for sure. So
he's on. He puts up tons of stuff. It's like every other day he's got something.
Absolutely. So before we kind of get into what the new objections and the new brouhaha is all about, let's just talk about the three main concepts of the settlement.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, the first topic of the settlement, the first main part, is to pay back damages, which is almost $3 billion, $2.77 billion, and that's owed to former athletes, okay, that are not playing anymore. Okay. Now, the next part of it is revenue sharing for current and future athletes. That could be up to $22 million per school. And then plus a complete overhaul of the NCAA. Basically new scholarship limits and roster limits for football and other revenue sports, possibly all sports. Okay. A new governance structure and a new enforcement arm of the NCAA specifically to enforce NIL rules.
To get themselves in trouble again.
Yes, exactly. Well, a lot of this is basically the NCAA is trying to use this case, which is former players. Okay,
yes, right.
They're trying to use this as a hey, let's settle our past damages and prevent more future damages by coming up with a structure. I don't know how parts 2 and 3 are going to work. We'll have to see.
Sure.
But there are some rumblings of discontent right now about part 1, about how they're going to pay back those damages. So let's get into that a little bit.
Okay.
So over the next 10 years, the NCAA is responsible for paying back 40% of that $2.77 billion. So 40% of that amount will be direct payments from the NCAA to however they set it up as a class action or whatever to those former athletes. Now, the other 60% is basically going to come from the schools, but the way they're looking at doing that right now is the NCAA is basically going to withhold from their revenue distributions that they are distributing to schools. Okay. And the formula that they're using is based on the revenue that each school receives over a 9-year period from over the past 9 years, okay? I think it's 2016 through 2023, actually. Okay. Of how much revenue they received from the NCAA, March Madness, the tournaments, okay? Because if you remember, college football playoff, most college football money never goes through the NCAA at the Division I level, at the FBS level. So really the majority of the revenue that the NCAA has control over is the men's national basketball tournament, the March Madness, the tourney. So they're using that formula of basically however much you received over the last 9 years from that tournament, that's how we're going to figure out what your percentage of this other 60% is going to be withheld.
Okay.
Now, here's the deal. The Big East commish, Val Ackerman, strongly objects to this. And I want to read her quote. I don't always like to just read verbatim, but I think it's important to read her quote. So this is Val Ackerman, the commissioner of the Big East. And let's remind everybody, the Big East is a non-football conference.
Right.
They are a power basketball conference.
Yes.
Maybe the most powerful basketball conference, but they are not a football conference anymore. So they are basketball only. So their revenues basically are coming from the NCAA men's tournament. Okay. So her quote is, based on the numbers we have reviewed, the liability of the 22 non-FBS conferences under the proposed formula appears disproportionately high, particularly because the primary beneficiaries of the NIL back pay amounts are expected to be FBS football players. I have voiced the Big East's strong objections to the proposed damages framework through recent emails to NCAA President Charlie Baker and his counsel, and through comments during the commissioner calls over the past 2 weeks. And so what she's basically saying is you have all these mid-major conferences, these non-FBS conferences that are basically paying all of this money based on the NCAA tournament, but most of this money is projected to go to football players. So why, and then she's saying, why the heck are we paying all this money? Doesn't make any sense. So she's pretty upset about it. I think that it makes a lot of sense why she's upset, and especially I think those other mid-major conferences for certain. So she's pretty upset. She's trying to stir the pot. Here's the problem. The lawsuit only names the Power 5 conferences and the NCAA Board of Governors. Now, all of these other conferences do fall under the NCAA Board of Governors, and they do get revenue through the basketball tournament, but they really don't have a say in this. So this upcoming week, the Power 5 conferences, and I was at first I was surprised, but it makes sense. They're actually having the Power 5 because they're still including the PAC, because this is about previous damages over the last 9 years, and the PAC was a power conference during that time. So the PAC will be voting on this, along with the other four. They're expected, I think all conferences are expected to vote. They're going to do, most of the conferences, it just requires a simple majority of the presidents of each conference.
Okay.
So you need each one of the Power 5s to approve it. That's expected to all happen by Thursday, which they're also expecting the NCAA Board of Governors to vote and approve it by Thursday as well. So before we get to the end of this week, most likely the P5 and the NCAA Board of Governors is going to approve this case, this settlement, where a lot of mid-major conferences, a lot of the 22 non-FBS conferences, in the words of the Big East commissioner, are going to have to pay a disproportionately high percentage. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a bunch of crap. I am on Val Ackerman's side, which means nothing because I'm not a Big East guy at all. But I would say, I think her point of the 22 non-FBS conferences being, what did you say, disproportionately high of the amount that they owe is 100% accurate. And why should they pay for a lawsuit that was with the P5? And they're allocating revenues, or they're allocating some of these payouts based on revenues that are from the P5, but they're taking the money from, I mean, I would say some G5. G5's hurt here a little bit, I think.
Possibly.
But the non-FBS is hurt by far and away the worst.
Especially a conference like the Big East that doesn't play football.
It makes no sense. So they're taking the money from these schools, these conferences, taking the money away. And guess who the big winner is here?
The Power 2. Yes.
What are we doing? Yeah. Like, those that have are getting the smallest chunk of back payments, and they're the reasons we're in this freaking mess to begin with, because they were named in the well, one reason they were named in the lawsuit, but there's a lot of other reasons. But they're named in, and now it's one of those things where, you know, when a lawsuit happens, you just want to stand as far away from the puddle as you can, so you don't get any, or get as limited amount of mud on you as possible. And the poor non-FBS schools, they're about as far away from the damn puddle that you can possibly get. But guess what? They're getting whacked by this thing. So I think it's a crock. I think they need to figure this out a different way. It makes no sense why you would take the men's basketball revenue. I mean, everything she said is legit. To pay, other than I would say it's mainly going to football. And while that may be true, it's just going to back payments.
Yes.
Like, I don't really care. To me, it's irrelevant to me where the money's going, whether it was football or whatever it was for. That's somewhat irrelevant to me. It's just back pay on NIL, period. Let's not make this any muddier than we already did. But to make it based off of the basketball tournament revenue for all of that, it's asinine. It just makes no sense.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
No,
I mean, I understand it, but
I think it's one of those things where you're absolutely right. The 22 non-FBS conferences are basically getting screwed.
Total screw job.
I'm going to use this analogy that I heard during my time in the military. It's a big shit sandwich, and everyone has to take a bite of it. But for some reason, the smaller conferences are taking a bigger bite out of it than they should.
They're gonna take 3 bites.
Yes. Okay.
It's a joke.
So here's the thing. Here's the problem, and I agree. I don't think it's fair. But who has the power? That's the problem. Those who have the power make the rules.
That's so asinine, though.
But that's the way it works. That's how the world works, and so we'll see how it goes. I mean, the AAC commissioner before was able to hold up some things. The PAC commissioner, PAC2, whatever, was able to hold up some things to get kind of what he wanted. We'll see if the Big East commissioner has any sway, but it looks like this week they're expected for the Power 5 and the NCAA Board of Governors to vote, and if they approve it, then they're going to be approving the Big East and these non-FBS conferences to take a big old bite of that shit sandwich.
I'm glad I don't have to.
Yeah. So, okay. So that was the objections to part 1,
right?
Which is and that's what everyone's kind of up in arms about.
Yeah.
There's some other interesting parts in Ross Dellinger's article. It's kind of down towards the end. There's some other parts of the settlement framework that's kind of creating some more tensions.
Okay.
Between the power conferences and the other Division I members.
Okay.
So basically the structures that are going to be set up, because we talked about revenue sharing for current and future athletes, $22 million, up to $22 million for school, and the overhaul of the NCAA, including new scholarship limits, new governance structure, and new enforcement of NIL. The way these are being structured are also, it looks like, being set up to the benefits of the power conferences over the smaller conferences yet again. So let's see here. The new model will include a separate governance structure for power conferences only, for rulemaking and enforcing, according to those with knowledge of the plans. And the new model is expected to be implemented for 2025, which is coming up right around the corner. Yeah. Wow. And basically the new model that they're looking at actually kind of is tailored towards Charlie Baker's proposal that you and I talked about, but it's basically just set up for those power conferences. Now, we haven't seen the verbiage. We don't know if is it at the Power 4. Some of the reporting in here talks about still the Power 5 and the Autonomous 5. Some of that is because the leftovers from the last 9 years. Right. We'll see how that's going forward. Or could these rules end up just being advantageous for the Power 2, where they just get more money, more power, and just pull away farther and farther. So there's definitely a lot of tensions about how this other part, the new overhaul, the new structure, is going to play out, and is it basically just going to further that divide between the power conferences, the haves and the have-nots. It feels like one of those things where we're really close to a settlement, but there's also a lot of problems. Are those problems going to be resolved in the next week, or are the power conferences just going to go ahead and push this through, vote on it, and make those disparities worse going forward? So,
well, that's what I was going to say. We're close to a settlement by which only the haves have a vote for, or a vote to that settlement. And they can craft it kind of any way they want. I know you've said that kind of before. So, it definitely is exacerbating the haves and have. At least it seems like it's going to be exacerbating the haves and have-nots. Although I would say, isn't some of this kind of how it was always supposed to be? Like the autonomous part was supposed to give them certain differences. Now I don't. Maybe we haven't had enough of that, and people just don't understand what they are, and maybe people like it that way. But wasn't that part of the whole reasoning for that?
Well, the autonomous part, it's a relatively new thing. The original model was a level playing field where, the Michigan and Ohio State had the same number of scholarships as Wyoming and Boise State.
Yeah.
And so that they couldn't just amass all of the talent and whatever to try and create a level playing field. The autonomous part, that's relatively new. That did give them, that was kind of the first step in giving them some more control and allowing them to consolidate their power.
Sure.
And this, some of the smaller members, the G5 members, are looking at this new settlement as, again, just another way that the power conferences are using.
Right.
They're using this back pay issue
Yeah.
to further squash the lower schools, the lower conferences, and they're just kind of sticking it to them again. So, we'll see.
It's interesting how they get to a settlement and they aren't the big loser.
Yeah.
At least it doesn't seem that they are. Are they a loser? Yeah, they're a loser, but there certainly looks like they're going to be getting some good stuff out of this, right? Like, so what do you say? It's like making chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Yeah.
But it's almost the reverse.
Yeah.
Like not for the non-FBS, but for the power.
Yeah, I think
it's like, we're going to spin this. So not only are we going to get out of the damn lawsuit, but we're actually going to be winners in this thing.
Yeah, because they're having the Big East, a non-football conference, they're having the Big East use some of their basketball money to pay off the Power 5 football players that should have been getting NIL this whole time.
Well, I'm salty because I'm a G5 guy.
Yeah. Right.
So I have to be salty about this.
So, and there's obviously three levels. There's kind of three levels to this. There's the power conferences. There's the G conferences.
Right.
And then we're even pulling in these 22 non-FBS. It's like the shit rolls downhill. We keep getting back to these same analogies.
We are.
The shit sandwich, the chicken shit rolling downhill. But I mean, it's just kind of getting shitty for the lower schools.
That might be the name of this podcast. I don't know if it would get flagged or not. But anyway, well, I appreciate you breaking it down because I did see the headlines, and I know you were able to kind of dive into this a little bit more. So we'll see what happens here come mid or end of the week if they actually get to a vote on this.
Yeah, and like I said, let's keep the conversation going. I want to hear from our viewers what they think about this. Should everybody just go ahead and bite the bullet, take the settlement, move on, or should the Big East and the G conferences and the non-FBS, should they fight the good fight, try and get out of this settlement? I want to hear from our viewers on this.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, with that, we thank you guys for watching. Again, live episodes Wednesdays, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. If you can come on, we'd love to see you here on the mountain. Thanks again, Steve. And with that, hey, give this one a like, subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you next time on The Big Mountain.